What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. I present to you Super Junkrat. New and improved and coming in to make a big meta impact in a game near you. Now, we are going to discuss the pros and cons of making Junkrat so darn good. It should be obvious what their intention was. Blizzard essentially is turning all of the anti-GOATs characters up to 11 in order to guarantee that we no longer see it as the mainstay comp in the Overwatch League, it appears. However, I think this is going to have some shocking effects. And we're going to start off by showing off why this little 20 damage buff is a very big deal, especially when it's combined with damage amp. First clip was playing in a pickup game against fellow YouTuber and buddy of mine, Nateson. Let's see how he feels about the new and improved Junkrat damage. One spam nade coming from cover is able to one-shot him. This is incredible and probably really annoying. So the thing is, Junkrat now does 182 with a Mercy Pocket, which essentially means if any splash damage or a teammate has shot a target at all, with a Mercy Pocket, you're going to be one-shotting things. Now, it gets even worse when we compare up to Orisa Supercharger, 50% damage amp now. Now my nades will be doing 210, enough to entirely delete this McCree or any squishy in my way. The splash damage hits onto the Orisa as well, damage amped. So my next nade coming through to do 210 again just deletes her from the planet. She's only got 400 health. This is incredible. And it gets even more crazy when you start shooting through a damage amplification matrix, making those 140 damage nades do 280 each, aka two-shotting a tank, except for Roadhog. One-shotting a Brigitte, and in fact, you have a lot of one-shot capabilities with the way these damage thresholds work. Now, with that small increase to the nade damage, the 1-2 punch of your nades plus mine, if you land both, will do 260, enough to delete characters with 250 health like Reaper, Brigitte, Doomfist, all of whom are pretty easy targets to land the combo on, might I add. And there's all sorts of other crazy interactions that this kind of makes a little wacky as well. I will get into explaining my thoughts on whether this is good for the game or things like that a little bit later in the video. But first, let me break down a few more interactions that I think you shouldn't undervalue. First of all, because nades do 140 now, although Junk doesn't quite shoot two of them in a second, there are cases where you don't see the first one coming, so the follow-up shot hits you in that next second anyway. He actually shoots at 0.65 hits a second, but still, it's very nearly 280 DPS, which is an important number because when you start to compare to the amount of healing that can go out per second. For example, Baptiste's nades do 60, Mercy's beam will heal 50 in a second. You see where I'm going with this? Ana's primary fire can't out-heal it. If you hit two nades in a row into a squishy, not even healing can save it. And this is kind of the crazy disparity that now exists with Junkrat being so good. And yeah, I think you better be afraid of him as a crucial meta component because realistically, he already was really close, and a lot of the anti-GOATs counters were really close to be able to dominate the comp. There's some nuances about GOATs comp that I don't think are really understood that realistically it already could be countered in a matchup as far as kills are concerned. It just was more economical to play the objective and lose with GOATs comp, just going again to eventually get your ults and eventually snowball onto the point, than it was to worry about your counters a lot of the time. So now what Blizzard has done is ramp up the counters that are trying to compete against GOATs comp to try to force pros to stop playing it. You will play DPS pros. Put Pine and Carpe on Widow. We're sick of seeing tank and support ults for 20 minutes every map. Well, in order to achieve that, they've made a Junkrat that is going to kind of seek and destroy, or let's say spam and destroy, in a lot of our ranked matchmaking games. And obviously, I think the reason why I find this so important to bring up is that a lot of players already found Junkrat super oppressive. And that's not going away. In fact, it's intensifying to a severe degree, especially when you add into the fact that Mercy's damage amp got a buff, at least in the way you're able to flicker it on and off a little bit more intuitively, and there's probably going to be a lot of Baptiste going around anyway, whether he's meta or not, due to him being a new hero, meaning you better look out when that amplification matrix is in front of Junkrat, because his nades will just delete everything. So we might argue that this is a nightmare for ranked matchmaking, to have an even more effective Junkrat spamming towards our team, collecting lots of free kills. Has Blizzard achieved their goal in trying to snuff out GOATs comp? Well, I do think GOATs is still playable in some contexts with some certain comps, but generally speaking, any map where Junkrat is good, I think GOATs comp will look bad. In fact, I'm a bit afraid that tanks as a concept are going to look bad. Running any tank that Junkrat can easily spam into might just do more harm than good. Having any tank out in front, trying to absorb damage up against these incredibly lethal nades coming down the pike, because you gotta remember too, he's doing more damage, he's gonna get more ult charge, he's gonna get more picks, and your shields are gonna be going down faster than you're used to. And on top of that, despite a lot of matchmaking players not playing Lucio, despite him being pretty required to go up against this kind of stuff, even if you do play Lucio, all of the speed nerfs are going to mean that Junk has easier shots to hit, because obviously a projectile's easier to aim if the target's not moving as fast, but also you're not going to be able to clear as long of distances or to do them as quickly, obviously, with speed amp dropping a bit. So that widens the gap of how many shots are going to be able to get through to either crack your shield or burst down a squishy in the backline, which is incredibly likely now that you do 182 with just a mercy pocket. That is an incredible number. And the reason it's so scary is that it's really close to 200, which is the key threshold. Back on the old damage value, Mercy, damage amping Pharah or Junkrat, who both did 120, the damage would only amp up to 156. And that's significant because if either of them land, having 40 odd health in Overwatch feels a lot better than having 18. If you have 18 health in Overwatch, a single shot from across the map from Lucio will kill you. One ball from Zenyatta, one headshot from Orisa's fusion driver, or 2 body shots will do the trick. So in a lot of cases, with just the smallest bit of your team helping you out, these single nades spamming across the map are one-hit kills. Now, there's a few reasons why I think Blizzard felt they had to push Junkrat and the meta as a whole in this direction. Of course, there's the pro level of play, well, I'll get to in a second, but also I think in a meta where Baptiste is prominent, range damage doesn't feel as devastating, because obviously if you can put down an immortality field, well, no damage is devastating. But still, even up against that, I think Junkrat's gonna have a really good time. You might think Baptiste would be good against Junkrat, but frankly, his healing is just not even close to enough to outdo the amount of spam he has coming towards him. The immortality field, it's stationary, so a decent Junkrat should be able to spam it from range in a couple shots, maybe even doing it from cover, which is a key point as well. Range damage to be able to shoot the immortality field and crowd control as well to get people out of it. Those are going to be prime meta components in a meta where Baptiste is at the top. But also, because Baptiste doesn't have a defensive ult, whenever the immortality field is destroyed or outplayed or whatever, Tyre is just going to be farming that team. Because it's not yet clear what role Baptiste should play. Is he a third support? Can you play him in a 2-2-2? In any case, he's a very farmable squishy against the spam of Junkrat and as well as his ultimate, in my opinion. Because although immortality field counters burst damage technically, because you can engage with the Tyre and hold on to it for quite a long time before it gets in, it's probably one of the better forms of burst damage in the game, because like a Diva Bomb, you launch at the enemy and then Baptiste can toss down the field, right? Saving everybody in an instant. But Tyre lingers outside for a long time, so it's really hard if it's stalking you for Baptiste to get the field down right in time. Meanwhile, your team can be kind of pressing up to force the issue. So overall, I think the Junkrat Tyre has the edge in that interaction. And I mean, even just a teammate booping somebody out of the area of effect of the field into the Tyre is going to net kills anyway, and I think that's a play that we're going to see quite often. So transitioning a bit into the pro meta now, and why I think this is a bit problematic of Blizzard to be doing, and why I prefer other means of trying to restrict the heroes that pros play, is that because Junkrat is as strong as he is, it doesn't mean pros will play him all the time, because that's not how the pro meta works. There's a bunch of counter interactions that essentially get banned out just by the logic of how counterpicking works in the game, and what ends up being the pro meta is what's left after all those counterpickings go back and forth. We see this in Overwatch League, where they essentially have what I would call a ban phase during the game, where both of them run back to spawn, holding tab to see what the other team has, and they're both counterpicking. This has been a recent trend that even Overwatch League fans are getting kind of upset about, where a team will come out on DPS heroes, see that the enemy has a Winston, not a Reinhardt, then go back to spawn, and the crowd will boo them for going back to GOATs. But that's just the obvious meta answer that you should definitely go with. so they're going to do it. It's kind of similar here with Junkrat. Now granted, Junkrat did get played in treehouse setups up against dive, because although Junk is technically weak to dive and he's stronger up against the deathball comp, his crowd control, traps, and spam provided enough cover for a Widowmaker to carry. So as long as you're nading the tanks and threatening the Genji, then Widow could be the all-star and you could get use out of Junkrat even up against his counters. So yeah, I do think he's one of the best picks in the bunker comp, for sure, paired with either an Ashe or a Widow. But on other maps where Goats is king and you don't see bunker comp very often, I think the team that goes Junkrat is going to be at such a big advantage that the enemy just will not play Goats into it. I don't think there's any triple heal, triple tank lineup that looks strong up against Junkrat, because you're just gifting over so much free value, whereas you could get away with eating up the spam in the Overwatch League meta right now, because you could absorb it, get your shields back, then speed boost to close the distance. Now that's largely taken away. So any character that's able to get to high ground or have any mobility advantage whatsoever, even Junkrat, which we don't think of as a mobile character, but it's going to be really hard for death balls to out-rotate even a bunker comp right now, because the speed boost is taken down a notch, so it's just harder to get those characters on top of those bunker setups to start swinging. All the while you'll be taking overloaded damage from the Junkrat, which either gets kills in its own right, breaks the shield in its own right, or just farms up too many rip tires for you to be able to handle. Realistically, I think this is why the casual community should join me instead of getting mad every single time I bring up hero bans for the Overwatch League, because it's balanced decisions like these that are Blizzard turning the dials up too much, in my opinion, to try to change what the pros play, rather than putting other restrictions on them, like a hero ban phase, which I've heard all of the arguments against, and I guarantee you they don't really hold up. One, we already have hero bans, they're just meta enforced, so we already know what it looks like to have two teams sit and spawn and counterpick each other until they're both on the meta approved comp. Two, we don't have enough heroes. Well, turns out MOBA games ban out about 7% of their entire roster. One ban per team would be the same distribution, so that doesn't hold up either. And three, this is how we don't put Blizzard in an impossible situation where we're expecting them to try to change how pros play the game in perfectly coordinated, I get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to play this game type gameplay. They have to tune the balance of a comp nobody else in the world basically can play, Goats comp, to make it unplayable. But when you do that, it has massive ripple effects down the ladder for the rest of us who are going to be eating Junkrat spam and kind of getting demolished, and I'd argue not having as much fun and it not being as fair as it used to be. Junkrat's that type of character where he's kind of a joke in pro play. He's more of a supportive DPS like Torb is. Like, he puts in his damage, but he's more of a way to zone and add pressure in a lot of spots. So even at this insane degree, he's going to lose duels to Genji, Tracer, maybe not Doomfist now that he can one-shot him, but Pharah, obviously. All these characters that have range and high skill. At the highest level of play, Junkrat gets clowned on. But as we know of years of playing this game, Junkrat's a character that you get a lot of free value on, and when you're not at high levels of play, he looks incredible. So I don't think this is a good change. I think it's just as short-sighted as the Reaper buff was, which they sort of walked back. But I hope they consider doing that as well with this Junkrat buff. Otherwise, I think we're going to have a lot of unhappy tank players, especially. And the good news is I play Junkrat, so I'm benefiting from this. I think my DPS account is going to finally hit top 500 for once, with a lot of fire in the holes in my future. But what do you guys think? I think it's probably a bit over the top. Let me know if you agree down in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out, lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, Overwatch League predictions, and more. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.